Okay. Now that we've gone off on that tangent, let's get back into this. This was funny. I don't know if you've read this particular version on this, with Microsoft attacking Motorola now.
I saw it somewhere the other day, and I can't even remember the way that they put it, but it really set correctly with me. Not that what Microsoft's doing is right, but I don't even remember. I guess it had something to do with they can't get to Android any other way than to attack the people that are actually selling it.
No. Basically, aside from the fact that some carriers are fucking up Android, it's becoming more and more. If you're installing Android, you have painted a bullseye on your back for both Apple and Microsoft to fire upon you, because they want to attack Google. And the reason I like this story so much is because it sums it up perfectly. It's got everybody who's suing everybody else, and they put a chart up. Let me walk you through, because I didn't realize it'd gotten this bad. NTP is suing Motorola, who is suing Apple, but Motorola is also being sued by RIM, Microsoft, and Nokia. Apple, of course, is countersuing Nokia. Microsoft has settled their suit against HTC, which is about the same suit as their suit against Motorola, which is actually a suit against Android, but Microsoft at no point is suing Google. Elan is suing Apple. NTP is also suing HTC. For some reason, Oracle's suing Google, who's suing nobody else. RIM is also suing Sharp, who is being sued by Kodak, who is also suing Life's Good, Sony Ericsson, who, by the way, are the other two companies not suing anyone, aside from Toshiba, who isn't suing anyone other, but for some reason is being sued by Nokia. Of course, Qualcomm couldn't leave Life's Good alone, so is also suing them. Samsung's being sued by Kodak also, who was also being sued by Nokia, who was suing everybody else, who has also settled their suit against Samsung also, because when they started suing Qualcomm, Qualcomm had the same pundits and sued them back, so they kind of had to settle all these suits so they didn't go to hell in a handbasket. But it didn't stop them from suing Hitachi, who also, by the way, isn't suing anyone. And I'll put the chart in the description, because I doubt all of y'all could follow that as I was going through it. But
I'm trying to watching the chart.
So yeah, it's like it's ridiculous. Well, I can sum it up. At the end of the day, all of these carriers are suing each other over Android, who is made by Google, based on Linux. But the only people suing Google at all is Oracle. And that's not over Android, that's over Java. Google is suing nobody. As a matter of fact, we should take time to point out the few companies, because what this is the 1980s all over again. Most of you who are probably watching this are probably too young to remember this, but when we look at the history of the whole PC versus Mac stuff and the platform wars and everything in general, we just assume it had always been Microsoft versus Apple. The reality is, from about 1982 to 1991, there were as many players as there are in the mobile arena right now. The two giants that survived are Microsoft and Apple, and Linux is basically at this point, why it's becoming a good, strong third competitor, is not on the same league due to lack of other people supporting it. So they won. And in the 80s, and during that decade when that was going on, this was the official stance everybody was taking then too. Everybody was suing everybody else rather than trying to openly compete. The official stance was, if I can't get your customers by building a better product, I'll make it impossible for you to do business with your customers by saying you're stealing from me. Eventually the courts threw that argument out. Mobile is now going through this struggle. But anyways, back to the important point. The following companies are the companies who are suing nobody in the mobile arena. Google. Google isn't suing anyone. And they're only being sued by one person. Google is unique in that they're not being sued by anyone in relation directly to the mobile arena. And they're not suing anyone. How that's managed to work out, considering they make Android, I can't figure out. But that's... Toshiba is not suing anyone. They're being sued, but they are not suing anyone. The same goes for Life's Good. Life's Good is not suing anyone. And neither is Sony Ericsson or Hitachi or Sharp or Samsung. So it's like, and some of these are companies I didn't really like that much, but honestly, Toshiba, Hitachi, and Samsung just went up about this much on my Renko company meter. The fact that they're not playing this bullshit game, because they know it's a lose-lose game. It's at the end of the day, it delays stuff, it wastes money, and it doesn't serve the end consumer. It's like, so I have to hand it to those companies, all of whom are active participants in this arena, who are not doing it. And assuming that holds true for Sony when they start making Android devices supposedly sometime next year, I'll give that rank to them. The reason I'm not giving that mark to Sony right now is Sony hasn't really officially released any of their devices yet. And Sony may join this whole...
Sony had released a couple.
They've released a couple, but the ones they're releasing aren't what I would call their main players. I think their main players are gonna that I would say actively compete against HTC, Motorola, and Samsung are gonna be the ones that they have slated for next year. So it's like you don't.
I've seen a couple of really cool ones coming out of Sony on.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've watched some John for Lakers Techno Buffalo.
Yeah, but are those officially available for purchase yet, or are they just coming out? I think they're coming out.
Available August 15th for $149.99.
Okay.
Possibly. Go check AT&T. Because, yeah, I mean that's not bad.
No, it didn't.
And we can continue, and I'll be looking this up.
No, but it's like this whole thing just kind of it really is sickening. It's like, and really this whole crap is mad because you know what I honestly think is going to wind up happening here is the same crap that happened with the 80s, where eventually a judge had just had enough and said this isn't patentable. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I hope that's what happens because this is just getting ridiculous. However, and I know we've been speaking high of Android this whole episode, but in this last part here, and this goes back to where we started, I'm almost...
The Sony Ericsson is available from AT&T right now.
Okay, I'll have to take a look at it. Since it's AT&T only, I'm
just looking at their site. I guess it might be available to somebody else, but probably not.
Yeah.
I think AT&T snatched it up.
Yeah, it's like, and I'm gonna have to.
CNET says.
I'm gonna have to look at that because it's like instantly if it's an AT&T only, I just instantly have a bad taste in it because of AT&T's reputation.
1.6.
That's like I said, they haven't released.
It's not a competitor.
Yeah, it's not a. Like I said, hardware-wise it looks good, but it's not a competitor with 1.6. Supposedly Sony has some in the work. What they're doing is they're combining a PlayStation Portable and a Sony Ericsson phone. And supposedly those devices are going to actually be a push, and they're going to be running some version of Android 2, and they're going to actively be out. It's like when Sony starts selling those devices is when I think we'll get a feel for how Sony is really going to play in this arena. Right now they're just kind of, we gave something to AT&T. It's like, but it's for this year they're not really a contender. But on that note and everything, that's what we've been getting to. Because we've been being really nice to Android. I'm honestly wondering if Android should be being the primary support anymore. And the reason I say, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I meant to look it up before we started doing this, and I forgot. Do you remember the name of that purely Linux mobile OS? Which people were questioning, why does it exist? But as Android becomes more and more screwed up, I'm honestly thinking it's the best thing we need.
MeeGo.
Yeah, because honestly, if Android keeps getting locked down and screwed up by the carriers, and MeeGo doesn't, MeeGo is going to steal Android's thunder.
MeeGo will run on several of the existing phones.
Yeah.
They've made it work on the Nexus One and the, which ones were they? I talked about them on one of my news videos recently. I can't remember. they've got a whole wiki page devoted to ARM-based devices, and specifically like the Nexus One, and it's an HTC something.
Of course, you'd have no way to install MeeGo on the G2, but
Right.
yeah.
The HTC Desire, the Dell Streak, and probably more than that.
Well, it's like what I honestly want to see here is just a link device that comes with. Until recently, I would have been saying Android, but now that Android's starting to go into some, I'm almost thinking it might be better if it came with MeeGo. Would be basically just a link device that is entirely outside of the carriers, where like some company, instead of going to AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile or Sprint, just went to Light Squared and says, is your LTE network ready? Okay, we're going to turn it in on that because we can do everything over the data. And just said, here's the device. The device costs this much. Access costs this much. Go have fun. Give us money, go have fun. It's like we don't care what you do with it. Just give us money, go have fun. Because that's not the approach with any of these carriers. They want to have their cake and eat it too. And it's becoming the approach of the handset manufacturers. Not only do they want us to buy the device, not only do they want us to give them money for the service, but then they want to dictate what we can do with it. It's like you could have it one way or the other. Either we buy it and then we're in charge, or you give it to us and you dictate. You can't do both. Now, right now they can, but the moment there's even a half-assed competition that is actively competing against that model falls apart. So it'd be interesting to see there.